Let's explore how to meditate anywhere, as if noise no longer mattered. This evening's lesson. Oh, good evening, Kevin and Jay and Rue and Teddy and Charlotte. This evening's lesson is drawn from a good-hearted question found on Reddit. The individual wrote, asking of the best way to focus while in noisy rooms. They elaborated. Currently, I'm a guest of a family far abroad from home, but I do not want to stop my daily meditation practice. Due to the very loud street next to my window, it is very disturbing during the practice. And I started to use binaural beats with noise reduction to reduce the noise of my surroundings to a minimum. It's quite a different experience due to the binaural beats, as I can tell right off. And I just wanted to ask if that's a good idea to implement in my daily practice. Or could it be better to just withstand or endure the loud surroundings and see it as an extra challenge to keep focused on my subject? As always, let us begin with some broad brushstrokes. First of all, I want to commend the enthusiasm of the individual who wrote this question, who wishes to meditate whilst traveling abroad and even in inconvenient circumstances. Well done, you. So, I must return to a frequent theme of mine. There are two paths, two lenses, if you will, through which to view the world. Our friend Lao Tzu, about 100 years before the advent of the Buddha, either collected or composed the 81 poems of the Tao Te Ching. If one was to read them every week, 52 times a year, one would notice patterns. And one would notice that the author frequently reminds us of things that are, what's the word I'm looking for? Things that are yang and things that are yin. But contrary to the ravings of stupid white men everywhere, he does not seek to reconcile the two. Au contraire, the author of the Tao Te Ching instead insists that we must always forsake yang and always choose yin. What has that to do with Buddhism? The same idea found its way into Buddhism. And in the early translation school, think of it instead of yang and yin, we think of it in terms of Gautama and the attributes of his wicked cousin Devadatta. So, Devadatta's attributes, the attributes of yang, the attributes of patriarchy, are to be rigid, fearful, are to be rigid, fearful, superstitious, controlling, elitist, competitive, cryptic, and cruel. Whereas, upon the Buddha's path, we strive to be flexible, loving, rational, laid back, egalitarian, lucid, cooperative, and kind. I'd like to make an apology. I am tripping over my tongue, partly because in an act of genius, I bit the hell out of my own tongue. And number two, I'm dealing with a lot of sleep deprivation. Last night, I had a cineplex of nightmares. Wonderful things to work through. But you know what they say, every hour of sleep lost is like you've drunk a beer. So I guess that makes me a cheap date. Once again, I'm not loaded, I don't drink, I'm a teetotaler, but I am sleep deprived, which is making me sleep depraved. So if I sound a little off my game, I apologize and beg your kind patience. So let's continue. We've talked about two paths, the path of being rigid and controlling, or the path of being flexible and laid back. Concentration is rigid and artificial. Concentration says this thing right here, I'm going to focus on, and everything else can fuck off, but not in the fun, tingly way. So concentration versus distraction, well, they are antithetical. They are at odds with each other. Like that wonderful episode, perhaps, Kevin, you'll remember this, from the Star Trek, the original series, when a man from, what's it called? A matter man and an anti-matter man with a Van Dyke beard were at odds with each other, and they were forced to fight each other for all eternity. Do you remember that? It was pretty cool. Anyway, so, but concentration is completely different from mindfulness. For in mindfulness, distraction is an impossibility for one is not trying to concentrate. Allow me to elaborate through the lens, through the lens of neuroscience. When we actively concentrate in reliance upon the medial prefrontal cortex, and when we actively contemplate in reliance upon the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, which is a winning answer in Scrabble, as a side effect, our blood tends to pool. I'm sorry, this is an inaccurate picture. Our blood tends to pool in our amygdala at the base of our limbic system, which functions as the seat of both anxiety and aggression, which is pretty much the opposite of what we want for meditation. Am I right? But there's some good news. When we replace active concentration with passive mindfulness, and when we replace active contemplation with passive meditation, then our blood mass shifts from our amygdala, chained in the dungeons of the basement of our brain. It shifts to this hunk of meat, the shape of the letter C, that the big kids call the anterior cingulate gyrus. I wonder if I put a picture of it here. Yes, that one's all mucked up. So, it's right here. So now that I've sold you on the idea that relying upon the two facets of our autonomic nervous system is far superior when it comes to mindfulness and meditation than relying upon our prefrontal cortex, let's dig a little deeper. It sounds like we're eating at a cannibal's house, doesn't it? Chill, monkey brains. So, every time we inhale, whether we know it or not, we are accessing our sympathetic nervous system. It's found not within the 3-pound supercomputer between our ears, but rather it is ensconced within the thoracic region of our spinal cord, the region that correlates or coordinates with our ribcage, despite the artistic license taken in this graphic. So, as I've already inferred, this sympathetic nervous system did not evolve to support either extreme of mind blanking or active concentration. Well, then, what did it evolve to do? Our sympathetic nervous system evolved to simply notice, and to do so vulnerably, passively, viscerally, and randomly. That means our mind gets to jump around like a dog on a hot deck, bouncing from paw to paw because he's trying to beg for a treat. Because the dog's got its priorities, am I right? So let's take another step further. Every time we breathe in, we're wired to notice. To notice sights, sounds, sensations, flavors, scents, and the like. To notice emotions, intentions, thoughts, memories, and imaginings. To notice the external and the internal, the physical and the mental, the pleasurable and the painful, the interesting and the boring, the glorious and the grotesque. Well, what are we supposed to do with all this stuff that we notice? Glad you asked. Just as every inhalation is followed by an exhalation, fortunately, every time we exhale, we are accessing our parasympathetic nervous system, ensconced within both the lower lumbar region of our spinal cord, as well as the tippy top of the cervical region. This bad boy has evolved to support both our physical relaxation as well as our mental release. So you might hear a sound as you breathe in, and you might feel a resistance to it. That's fine. But every time you breathe out, you're wired to release that resistance to that sound, whether that sound was discordant or melodious. The same holds true for the beauties and uglies of sight, the pleasures and pains of sensation, the deliciousness and disgust of flavor, as well as the fragrance and foulness of scent. The same holds true to the pleasure and pain of emotions, the kindness and cruelty of intentions, the sharpness and dullness of intellect, the fuzziness and clarity of memory, as well as the delights and disgusts of imagination. All dualities that we perceive during the inhalation collapse into simplicity as we relax into our exhalation. So our job is not to ignore the sound. Our job is to surf the sound. Oh, thank you. Thank you for relying the wise and sage-like greeting of the feline overlords. I must warn you that the tireder I get, the more I slur with fatigue, the more slap happy and silly I get. So, in the words of Betty Davis, buckle up. Ha ha! We're in for a hell of a ride. I look forward to exploring the finer points of this with you after approximately 30 seconds of housekeeping. This is Lama Jigme Gyatso of the Buddha Joy Meditation School. For more than 30 years, I've spent about 8 hours a day, almost every day, studying, practicing, mastering, and reverse engineering the teachings and techniques of each sect of Buddhism so that you would not have to. Welcome, my friends, to Meditate Like a Jedi, which is made possible due to the generosity of viewers just like you. And of course, thank you, Mr. Sir Kevin of Hayes. I thank you. And of course, your hippos as well. And your little hippos, too. So what I'd like to do is through the magic of my streaming software, what I'd like to do is open up a different text. Tonight's practice will be based upon my adaptation of the Buddha's most concise meditation manual, the Anapanasati Sutta. The Buddha was fond of looking at life through 4 lenses: the physical, the interpersonal, the mental, and the circumstantial. He called these the 4 bases of mindfulness. So, therefore, it should come as a little surprise that he organized the 16 exercises of his meditation manual in sync with those 4 designations. Let us begin with Kaya Sati's only set of 4 preliminary meditations that center our bodies. Now, centering here is not something we're forcing, we're allowing. It's kind of like this. When you're super, super tired and you're ready for bed, you don't force yourself to go to bed, especially as an older guy. You just kind of like, oh, it's bedtime, yippee, and just roll into bed. Same type of deal here. We're already wired to center. We're just enjoying the process. We're savoring the process. Kind of like when you eat a meal that has been produced by your mom or your grandma. They spent all day cooking it. And so you're just, with the sincerest of gratitude, savoring each nuance of their handiwork. And oh, look, Buddhas can't escape the tyranny of their feline overlords. Up here, let's see if you can see this all right. Let's see if you can see. Captain Redundancy added again. Let's see. Here we go. So this pit right here, first week, 32 rounds of this meditation every 12 hours. So this would take less than 5 minutes. 32 sounds daunting, but I assure you it's easy peasy lemon squeezy. We begin with the first of Centering's 4 physical preliminary practices, where we mindfully notice and even investigate our relaxingly longer, gentle exhalations. So mindfulness is the first of 7 enlightenment factors, and luckily we're already wired to do it automatically. During our inhalation, we can silently and mentally recite how. And during our exhalation, we can silently and mentally recite long. Now, I'd like to do this for 2 sets of 16, which begs the rather intelligent question, how do we count to 16 on just 4 fingers and 1 thumb? Simple. During each inhalation, I like to advance the tip of my left thumb, and I count upon either a set of creases or a tip of one of my 4 fingers, which total 16 points. And then I do that twice. On the other hand, I'll count 1 set, and then I'll count 2 sets. So let's practice together. Last night I awoke with some very disturbing nightmares. And these, just embarking upon this set of meditations, really helped to restore peace to my body as well as my brain. So I'm going to return my hands to my lap for holding them in the air like I just don't care, and in front of the camera. It's just not sustainable. But I'm going to rummage about in my digital toy box for a moment and find a Jim Dandy photograph of one of my favorite Buddha statues. Put it right here next to Shanti, Master Shanti, to remind you that it's okay just to put your laps, just to plop your hands in your lap. If one wanted to, during their second week, they could perform 32 rounds of this meditation after 32 rounds of the one meditation that preceded it, and they could do that every 12 hours. This is the gentle, incremental path to the master of the Buddha's path in only, 16 weeks? Now we come to the second of Centering's 4 physical preliminary practices where we mindfully notice and even investigate the coalescence of our invigorating inhalations. So invigoration is the third of 7 enlightenment factors, and it happens automatically. For our inhalations are naturally shorter and more stimulating than our exhalations. We don't have to force it. This happens automatically. So this exercise is quite similar to the first. We're just swapping the word long with the word short. I guess I should use the word adjective if I want to be Captain Fancy Pants. Fancy Pants McGee, like that sound, which is really popular right now on TikTok. Oy vey. Oh, here's a fun idea. Let's just do this. Do 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 do. Well, all right then. We come now to the third of Centering's 4 physical preliminary practices, where we allow our minds to mindfully notice and even investigate our bodies. So what does that mean, investigate? Investigation is the opposite of defensiveness. Or I should say curiosity is the opposite of defensiveness. We will notice beautiful things, we will notice ugly things. We will notice things to feel proud over. We will notice things to feel really embarrassed about. That's the path. This is the way. The greatness comes not in what we notice, but in what we do with what we notice. So I'm going to change the verb feel to the verb hear. Feeling is more sedate, hearing is more energizing, seeing is even more energizing. So, trying to find that middle path between the two extremes. So let's metaphorically listen to our bodies. You eat too many lentils and it'll be literally listening to your body. Whoops. We come to the fourth of Centering's 4 physical preliminary practices where we allow our bodies to tranquilly relax. Tranquility is the fifth fold of the fifth of 7 enlightenment factors. And as I mentioned during the opening lesson, it's already hardwired into every exhalation. So we're not making our bodies relax. We're allowing our bodies to relax. We are getting out of our own way. So form is just a monosyllabic synonym for body. We continue with Vedana Sati Seta 4 jhana meditations that center our feelings. Sati means mindfulness. Jhana is a reference to centering. We begin with the first of 4 feeling-oriented centering practices, where we savor the... So feeling here is reference to it's reference to both the emotional and the physical. So we begin with the first of 4 feeling-oriented centering practices, where we savor the first jhana's invigorating, blissful joy that flows from gently grinning with the corners of our mouth, the apples of our cheek, and the crow's feet of our eyes, towards our bodies of flesh, blood, and bone. Joy is the 4th of 7 enlightenment factors. So here's the cool thing. We don't have to force the grin. In fact, that's counterproductive. It does more harm than good. But here's the funny thing. If we silently and mentally recite the verb for grin, then our subconscious will begin to play with the neural pathways responsible for grinning, whether or not we grin. Whether we do or don't grin at all. When you wake up in the morning, if you play with this exercise, will act as an antidote for your boo-boo face. We continue with the second of 4 feeling-oriented centering practices where we savor the second jhana's peaceful joy that flows from gently grinning, once again, with the corners of our mouth, the apples of our cheeks, and the crow's feet of our eyes, towards our thoughts, emoting, intending, reasoning, recalling, and imagining. So we're using thought here as an umbrella term. Let's continue with the third of 4 the third centering practice, where we savor the third jhana's contentment by mindfully noticing, investigating, and coalescing our thoughts So coalescence is, think of it this way. As we breathe in, our air automatically coalesces or gathers within our lungs. As we breathe in, we involuntarily notice our thoughts. As we breathe in, again, we silently and mentally recite the word thoughts. As we breathe out, we remind ourselves that we're already wired to relax during each exhalation. And we're using the word ease as a monosyllabic synonym of relaxation. Let us continue with Chitta Sati's second set of 4 jhana meditations that center the mind. We begin with the first of 4 mind-oriented centering practices, where we savor the 5th jhana's metaphoric sphere of infinite spaciousness by mindfully noticing, investigating, and coalescing our mind's ability to see, hear, feel, taste, smell, and the like. So again, we're using mind as we're replacing one umbrella term, thoughts, with a different umbrella term, mind. And we're going to use the verb here, but we're going to use it metaphorically. So in other words, we're not forcing perception, we're allowing perception. Perception is a natural function of every inhalation. Let us continue with the second of 4 mind-oriented centering practices, where we savor the 6th jhana's metaphoric sphere of infinite awareness, which we generate by allowing the mind to invigoratingly gladden us towards it. We gently smile. Whoops, that's weird. Let's tend to that. Okay. We come to the third of four mind-oriented centering practices, where we savor the seventh jhana's metaphoric sphere of non-graspability. But first, let's do some more grin mind. Got a little ahead of myself. Now we come to the third of four mind-oriented centering practices, where we savor the seventh jhana's metaphoric sphere of non-graspability, as we allow our minds seeing, smelling, hearing, tasting, feeling, and the like, to tranquilly relax in the most sustainable way. We come to the fourth of 4 mind-oriented centering practices. We receive the 8th jhana's metaphoric sphere of acquiescent non-labeling. By experiencing the liberating equanimity or balance of our controlling tendencies to push and pull and remedy and cultivate. During our inhalation, we can silently and mentally play with a noun mind. During our exhalation, we can silently and mentally recite the verb free. Welcome to this evening's live stream. The moment you have a specific question about Buddhist chanting, Buddhist meditation, Buddhist philosophy, or their application, simply type your question in great detail in the chat window. We end with Dhammasati, also known as Anika Vipassana, with a set of 4 impermanence contemplations that help us to circumstantially let go. We begin with the first of 4 passive contemplations where we invigoratingly consider coarse impermanence. And we're using here metaphorically, so during our inhalation, here during exhalation, change. So we're not contriving change. Change is all around us. We're just giving ourselves permission to be vulnerable to it, which can be a scary thing. It's so ironic that we see a photograph, a still captured from The Phantom Menace, where the archetypical Jedi Knight, Qui-Gon Jinn, taking a break from his final duel for meditation, after which he would soon die. Death comes to all. Death came to Lao Tzu, the old teacher. Death came to the Enlightened One, the Buddha. Death came to the Christ, Jesus. Everybody dies. Few make peace with it. We continue with the second of 4 passive contemplations, where we consider subtle impermanence. We come to the third of 4 passive contemplations, where we consider very subtle impermanence. We conclude with the fourth of four passive contemplations, where we consider relinquishing, surrendering, and letting go. During our inhalation, please silently and mentally recite the verb here, referring to, of course, a metaphoric perception. And during our exhalation, let us silently and mentally recite the verb yield. So I'd like right now to seal the practice with a bit of chanting in harmony with the Metta Sutta. So do bear with me while I do a spot of chanting. I invite you to chant with me in just a moment or two. All right. All right. Please chant with me. May all minds clear yet and permanent be as enlightened as a Buddha's mind. All right, let's chant. May all experiences of the interpersonal resounding yet impermanent be as loving as a Buddha's speech. Whoops. All right. May all bodies sensual yet impermanent be as beautifully healthy as a real or imagined deva's form. Okay, and our final chant. So these aren't prayers as much as just ways of lovingly exercising our intention. May all circumstances appearing yet impermanent be as safe and abundant as a real or imagined Devi's land. If you feel that I have earned it, you could give this live stream a thumbs up. You could even help support this channel. In approximately 10 and 2/3 hours, I would very much like to return to lead tomorrow's early meditation class and group practice. And if you are as geeky as me, may the Force be with you always.